Hello, Clutter Warriors. Welcome to the show. We have a very special guest today. Anna Dearmon Kornick is with us. Welcome, Anna, to the show. And I'm very excited to share her and her knowledge with you, a compatriot when it comes to productivity and time management. So Anna's going to have a lot of I'm certain she's going to have a lot of interesting things to share with all of us today. So welcome to the show, Anna.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course, my pleasure. So let's why don't you tell everybody how you got into this work and your journey to the work as a container or a context, so that we can start there.
Sure. So my name's Anna Dearmon Kornick. I'm a time management coach and host of It's About Time, a podcast sharing stories and strategies about work, life, and balance. But I have not always been amazing at time management. Funny enough, my first job right out of college was as a was as a congressional scheduler to a United States congressman right out of college. I was managing time for someone who had to somehow be everywhere at once, while I was also learning the basics of time management as a young professional myself. It was wild, and I absolutely loved it. But I also really missed home. Living in DC, the hustle and bustle can be really exciting. But I'm originally from Louisiana. And if there's one thing I need you to know about Louisiana, it's that our food is amazing. And in DC, I just could not get good gumbo or etouffee or boiled crawfish or all of those good things, or my grandmother's homemade jelly. And so I moved back to Louisiana, where I kicked off a 10-year career in the 24/7 world of crisis communications and government affairs. Every day was a disaster, literally. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, nonprofit embezzlement schemes, universities on the brink of financial collapse. Every day was chaos to be brought to order and crisis to be managed. But as you can imagine, that 24/7 lifestyle can begin to take its toll on you.
Sure.
After a while, my boundaries were non-existent. No, my health, as you could imagine, was not in a great place. And my relationships were also basically crumbling. I was starting to miss really important life events like friends' baby showers and birthday parties. And I missed my dad's 70th surprise birthday party because I had a mandatory work event. You can't get a do-over on experiences like that. And so after one too many mornings of crying in the stairwell on the way up to my windowless office, I knew that something had to change. I never expected that I would become the crisis that needed managing. And so I walked away. I quit what would be considered by many a really, cool, glamorous job, in search of something different, in search of something that actually spoke to my values. And so after a good bit of trial and error that I'm sure many of us have experienced at one point or another, and diving into every goal setting, vision oriented, time management, productivity, values, leadership book that I could get my hands on, I decided that I would make it my mission to help busy professionals and business owners either dig themselves out of that place of overwhelm and burnout that I had found myself in, or help them avoid it altogether.
Right.
So that's what brought me to being a time management coach.
That is awesome. What a great story. So, and now you've written a book, which will be on the shelves in June.
Yes. Time Management Essentials from McGraw-Hill. I mentioned that during my exploration period, I read every single time management book that I could get my hands on. And the thing is that one book would be so focused on habits, and one book would be very focused on finding your vision. And then another book entirely would be about how you should plan your week. And I just thought that you shouldn't have to read 37 different books in order to put together a time management strategy that actually makes sense for your life. And so that's what Time Management Essentials does. it starts with crafting your vision and articulating your core values, all the way through prioritizing, designing your ideal week, and then doing weekly planning in order to make sure that your ideal week matches up with your reality. But then it goes beyond time management and walks you through how to plan your time based on your energy levels and the importance of getting rest, which is one of the most underrated time management strategies there is. And then one of my favorite chapters is about how to get mentally organized.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about that. Because when we think about, right, I mean, the show is called the Declutter Your Life show. And it from my point of view, as the host of the show, when we think about simplification, it's really, there's an opportunity to simplify in every area of our lives, right? I mean, it is a 360-degree approach to simplifying, which doesn't mean removing all the juicy deliciousness from your life, right? I mean, the idea is not to boil down your life to something that is completely functional and devoid of anything that is fun or unusual or spontaneous. I think many people who struggle with organization and or time think that systems and repeatable, predictable results mean that all of the spontaneity is going to be removed from your life. And as you know, that's as far from the reality as anything, right? I mean, you get to be spontaneous because you have structure. Yes. Spontaneity without structure is chaos.
Yes.
Which is what you were managing, right? With all, but between the man-made disasters, the human-made disasters, and the natural disasters, all of that is spontaneity without structure. And so it's a mindset shift for the listeners, for the people that we work with, to understand that underlying structure, you created the structure. Each of us creates the structure that we want to live our lives inside of. So it can be as unyielding or as pliable as we want it to be. We're not required to live in a rigid system of someone else's making. And there's so much power in that for each of us, right? I mean, that we get to curate our own lives. We get to decide what are the things that we have around us, what is important to us, how do we want to spend our time. And so I'm delighted that your book is so focused on empowering people to create their own system, right? I mean, there's best practices that provide structure, universal structure for everyone, but how that's applied, if you're homeschooling 5 children, that's completely different than if you are a flight attendant with 2 houseplants and no companion animals and no partner, right? I mean, how they create their schedule is going to be completely different from somebody who's running a farm, but everybody would benefit from fundamental structures and aligning those choices with their values. So
yes,
and good on you.
I think so often we want to save time or take the easy route by copying and pasting a strategy that seems to work for someone else, or that someone has written about in a book. And they say, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. And then we feel like a failure when that person's system doesn't work for us, or when that billionaire's morning routine doesn't fit my life as a mom of 2 with a puppy who works from home. It takes more effort to create your own system, but with the right pillars in place, having that structure gives you freedom.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. I've got a book coming out in April, which, depending on when this airs, will have already dropped or not.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. And I talk about many of the similar things. So I'm looking forward to reading your book. and comparing notes between what I'm also suggesting that folks do, because it sounds like they're very similar, right? I mean, you can't take anybody else's day and bend it to be your day. You can take the structure, the skeleton, the scaffolding, the pillars, the language is unimportant to how you identify those structural points. But the structure, if you're building a house out of 2x4s, 2x4s and 2x6s and sill plates and headers are all the same tools, but where the doors are, where the windows are obviously going to be specific to your home. It's the same thing, right? I mean, we work on a clock that runs in 24-hour cycles. None of us are going to change that unless we choose to live off the grid and get up with the sun and go to sleep with the sun. Then you can have your own cycle. But if you're going to live in the developed world, you're going to be on a 24-hour cycle. So you have to accept that. But how you move through 24 hours is completely up to you. So I'm so excited that the people who get to work with you and the people who will read your book are going to get useful tools that are going to support them in creating their own lives, rather than, again, that failure, right? I talk all the time about success breeds success and failure breeds failure. If you lose or you fail at something, the next time you attempt it, you're already feeling defeated. And I mean, we can work on your feeling state and your mindset, but the reality is that you've got that energetic point of view. And if you're feeling beat up when you start, you've almost guaranteed subpar results, because a part of you you're waiting for that other shoe to drop, right? Like, it didn't work last time. Why would it be any different this time? And the truth is that if you're not trying anything different, it's unlikely to be different the next time. So you have to try it. You have to make those changes.
Right. And trial and error can feel terrifying for many of us because of the error part. We don't want to make mistakes. We don't want to get things wrong, but mistakes are learning. Mistakes are experiments. That's why you said the mindset part, and having a time abundance mindset when it comes to the way that you manage your time and your day and your to-do list. That's when everything becomes converted to an experiment. And that's the way that I try and talk with my clients about it, is that let's do an experiment. That way there's no, it doesn't matter what happens. You learn from it. It's an experiment. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I'm mindful of not wanting to overgeneralize. I certainly know that when I was growing up, mistake was a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Mistakes were to be avoided. Mistakes were things that you got punished for. They were not learning opportunities. And I really, in as much as I educate adults, I don't spend a tremendous amount of time with children, and I don't spend a tremendous amount of time with children in public or private schools. So if somebody who's listening is working with kids, it would be so helpful to reframe the experiment to be something that is novel and breeds curiosity and has very low risk involved, that the consequences of failing are just the opportunity to try again, not that there isn't some grave looming tragedy that is on the other side of playing. I mean, because it's just another form of play if you can go there, right? But I think, again, just speaking for myself, where I came from, mistakes were to be avoided. So it's not a surprise that I was risk averse for much of my childhood and into early adulthood until I retrained myself. And I credit certainly the professors that I had at college for creating an environment where learning, the consequence, I mean, even if you think about it in terms of grades, right? I mean, it wasn't like I was going to flunk, right? Maybe on a test, but there was always the opportunity for a do-over which we don't get in life. Once we leave the lab, right? Once we leave the experiment, we don't always, you know, as you pointed out, your dad's 70th birthday party, right? You don't get do-overs in life, but in the laboratory, you get them as many times as you want. It took Edison how many times to come up with a light bulb?
Right.
So, and, you know, George Washington Carver, I mean, there's all of the great experimenters who put their heads down and just, you know, Madame Curie, right? Like, we're gonna crack this code and we're gonna get to the other side of it. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what happens in between until we get the result that we want. And fostering that kind of a mindset so that everybody, you know, I mean, everybody feels like a little possible scientist in the best way, right? Not like in an overly eggheady way, but in a way like this is, because I mean, because if you think about it, if you cook that way, right? I mean, well, what do we have in the fridge? Okay, I'm going to make dinner. I've never made this before, but we'll call this, you know, egg surprise. And whatever it is what it is, right? And now you're like, oh, that actually came out good. We're going to make that again, right? Yeah. That's how it's bringing that approach to everything.
And that is, and I know I already said that it's terrifying for some people, but one of the first things that I do with my clients is that I have them take a personality assessment, because some people are much more perfection driven than others. Some people are going to be much more interested in experimentation. Others want a very set checklist. Give me a checklist of things to do. And when you know that about yourself, and so I very often say, yes, vision is a very important first step to knowing how you want to spend your time with intention. But knowing yourself is also so important, because when you know what makes you tick and how you prefer to make decisions and whether you like things to be open-ended and spontaneous or planned and complete, you're able to fast track to strategies that work well for you. And so if anyone listening ever has an opportunity to take personality assessments or learn more about yourself, that can really give you some amazing breadcrumbs or clues into how to best manage your time while you're in that experimentation phase.
Yes. Yeah. And yes. And it's also, I think, important to, the information is super helpful. And I think someplace where people get lost is then trying to decode the why am I like this, as if that kind of critical analysis is going to, I mean, none of us were born with a book,
right?
That is like, this is why between nurture and nature, you are the way you are. So I think utilizing the information to make better choices for ourselves, super helpful, right? Sometimes people get lost on that rabbit hole of like, oh, I don't like this about me. I want to change it. And I want to figure out why I'm like this. And I feel like, I mean, certainly psychotherapists have a, you know, that's a robust industry.
Right.
And having clients who are psychotherapists as well as friends that are psychotherapists, it's also hard to find the absolute why, right? Yeah. It's not Simon Sinek's big, like, why am I driven to do what I do, as much as, is it because your mom locked you in the closet when you were 4 years old? Is it because, you know, your grandmother always took you for a walk on Sunday mornings? It's hard to know that you're going to be able to pinpoint, this is the genesis of why I'm like that, as much as, now that I know this about myself, how do I work with this information?
Yes.
That's a position of power, right? The why becomes an opportunity, I think, again, to become very frustrated if you can't pinpoint, aha, this is the exact moment where this personality quirk or feature was developed.
And I'm like, why does it matter? You can't do anything to change what happened all those years ago. Let's take what we got now. Let's work with it. Let's be present and future focused, and let's make the best of it.
Yeah, I will say that, and it sounds like you, both in your work as a coach as well as in your life, right? I mean, I feel like it doesn't matter how old I am. The best of my life is still ahead of me. I've had some amazing experiences in my life, and I don't feel like it's at all over.
I hope the best is ahead of me. I hope I haven't peaked yet.
Exactly, right. And I mean, I was listening to this interview on the radio a couple of weeks ago. I was driving in the Bay Area, and there was a woman. It was on the Moth Radio Hour. She became a park ranger at 85. She retired at 100.
Wow.
And I mean, that for me was so inspiring to think, like, at 85, she was like, I've always wanted to be a park ranger. I don't have anything else to do. I'm clearly retired. I think I'm going to go do it. She obviously was the oldest person who became a park ranger. And then as she worked 15 years from 85 to 100 as a park ranger, it's just clearly glass half full mindset there, right? Not like, oh, I'm going to sit in a rocking chair and wait to die. She was all, and she's still alive, all about having peak experiences at any point in your life. And I think that, again, bringing it back to time management and certainly clutter, these things are the things that get in our way, right? I mean, it's relatively simple, not always easy because of mindset, willingness, but the fixes are relatively simple. They're mechanical adjustments. And without the story that we bring to it, the charge, the energetic either buoyancy or degradation that we bring to the experience, it's just adjusting things, right? Getting up 15 minutes earlier, or going to bed 15 minutes later without messing up your sleep hygiene, right? These are minor tweaks in the scheme of things that will yield exponential benefits when you approach it that way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is, we could talk all day, and I'm mindful of, as we close, right? So thinking about your book, if you've got 1, 2, or 3 major takeaways that will provide big impact for folks with little effort, right? Let's give them the biggest win we can with the least amount of pain. What are 1, 2, or 3 things that they could do immediately after listening to this podcast that would yield them some significant benefits?
Absolutely. So if I share one tip that I share with everyone, it's to take time each week to have your very own weekly planning session. When we leave for a road trip, we get gas, we plan our route, and then we get in the car. We don't just start driving. Your weekly planning session is your roadmap for the week. It's your opportunity to get a bird's eye view of the week ahead, to combat communication breakdowns before they happen, to find solutions, to step into your week feeling calm and prepared. So if you've never done a weekly planning session, take a moment to first decide what you need to plan. Then, based on what you need to plan, identify what tools you need to create your plan. Then commit to a weekly meeting with yourself. Put it on your calendar, hold the space, and then finally decide how you'll make it fun. Whether it's getting a fancy coffee or lighting an expensive candle or listening to your favorite music, decide how you'll make this time fun so it's something that you look forward to. That weekly planning session is 30 minutes a week that will change your life.
Awesome. Oh, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Well, it's been delightful. And maybe we'll have part 2 of this conversation, because I know that there's so much more that we could unpack. I really appreciate your time joining us on the show. Remember that Anna's book is dropping on June 20th, which happens to be International Productivity Day. Is that correct?
Yes, World Productivity Day.
World Productivity Day.
Global Productivity Day.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the perfect day for folks to focus on personal as well as global productivity. Where can they find you online, Anna?
Sure. Well, I would be thrilled if you would check out my podcast, It's About Time, with new episodes dropping every Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts. And then I actually spend a good bit of time over on Instagram. So if you are an Instagrammer, come find me. Let's be friends. Anna D. Kornick is my handle. I would love to chat.
Perfect. Well, great. Thanks again, Anna, for joining us for this episode of the Declutter Your Life show. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again with you real soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.